That smile is still ingrained in my head. I wish I could say I remembered pulling into the station at 12 or that I was actually dreaming. Apparently, I had gotten off the shuttle at some point. The first thing I recall after arriving in 12 was someone patting me on the shoulder as I was sitting on a bench. I looked over my shoulder to see a man I'd figured upon first glance must have been anywhere between his late 60s, early 70s. His hair was all white, but it didn't seem like it was because of age. I don't know how to describe it in a realistic sense, even to this day. It's like his hair stole the color from snow and it didn't look dyed either. He seemed old, yet had a youthful glow to him. I saw how he had one of his corner of his lips raised. I'm sure any normal person would think he was just trying to look friendly, but I mention it because, well, it feels like that smirk was his way of silently saying that he knew what I saw and what I was going through. I looked him in the eyes for what must have been no longer than a second before he looked around, and, well, I think I realized that Gyron, the girl, and the older man weren't anywhere to be found as well. It was then that he spoke to me in a voice that I seemed to forget so easily, and I heard it not too long ago. It's about time we get a move on, Tyron. You'll see them all later, hopefully. The man said to me in a way that one would tell another in an effort to console them. What? When did I get off the shuttle? How long have I been sitting here? I asked, confused. You've been zoned out for roughly 12 minutes. Now come on, we have paperwork to take care of, said the old man. It was at that point I put two and two together, realizing he must have been Arkin, my employer. Also, did he really just let me sit here for 12 minutes? Could have shaken me or something. Arkin, right? I asked, still not entirely 100% sure, as I'm sure no one wants to mistake someone's identity. It's always an awkward situation. Yes, that's me. Glad to see you catch on quickly. Things may just work out for you. If that wasn't a red flag on top of what already happened, and I don't know what is. Work out for me? What do you mean, like the job, or referring to something else? I'd asked, hoping for any amount of clarification on what he meant. You'll find out in time, Tyron. We can go over everything you need to know at a later point, but we do not overwhelm you with information on the first day. But let's talk strictly in hypotheticals for a moment. Don't give me an answer outside of anything hypothetical. Alright? Why would he want to talk in hypotheticals, and about what? Was he seriously going to keep leading me in circles about giving a simple answer? I didn't understand at first, but he quickly changed that. Hypotheticals? I mean, sure. Alright. What is it? I said, waiting for some sort of stupid, lighthearted question. Let's say hypothetically you saw something on that bus ride that freaked you out. Let's say hypothetically that it wasn't some weird sense of time or unusual smile from another individual on the bus. Well, let's hypothetically say that you saw something out of the window as you drove into town. Hypothetically, do you think you would have seen something that scared you? From the moment he finished the first sentence, I felt like my stomach had fallen into a bottomless pit. I had simply frozen there, staring at the ground as the events replayed in my head. That creature whose sunken eyes had carved themselves into my soul. I could feel a chill run down my spine and my body shiver. I tried to gather whatever words I could to answer the question, and for a moment I had forgotten the rules of the question. Looking back at it, I think Arkin spared me with what he said next. Remember, it's a hypothetical question, Tyron, so answer it like one. He said in a sterner tone than last time. I cleared my throat and spoke. Hypothetically, let's say I did see something out the window as we drove past the sign of town. Hypothetically, let's say I think I would have been fucking terrified of its blood. I responded only to have Arkin cut me off before I could finish. That's all you need to answer. I will explain this question to you once we go over the paperwork, but you mustn't speak a word more of it until then, Arkin said. I'm still pretty sure he saved me from, me there. Now come, let's get to my office. Arkin spoke and began to walk away from the shuttle. I looked around for a moment and wondered where the other three went, and I figured they'd be alright, but hell if I was going to get left behind in this place, so I quickly decided to stay close to Arkin. Well, as close as one can get without making things awkward for both involved. He led me through the streets of the city. Besides all the creepy and terrifying crap going on, it was a surreal experience. Just seeing how different 12 was compared to 9. No obvious wealthy sector, no major industrial sites, no skyscrapers. I think the tallest building I had seen was an apartment, and even then it was no more than 6 stories tall. As a matter of fact, the tallest structure in the city, when placed next to the rest of the buildings, was a telephone tower. The weirdest part is it wasn't hooked up to any others. No power lines, or whatever those things are that usually attach, the poles together. Funny to think that it wasn't strange compared to the first few things I've saw or seen since getting there. You'd also think that a town in the wood and canyon and surrounded by nature as far as the eye could see wouldn't need any more floral decoration, but it turns out these people have a really weird obsession with covering nearly every bit of grass and dirt with flowers and bushes. At first I was amazed by it all, but every building we walked past, every window and door, I noticed something that turned my amazement into confusion. Every window had a planter that had only 3 flowers in it. Red, white, then red again. Exactly in that order, exactly in that number, for every single one. Even the doors had vine frames that had black buds and orange leaves. Arkin must have looked back and noticed that I was starting to get puzzled by something that could have, simply be brushed aside, and, he spoke up nonetheless. So you noticed them. And isn't exactly hard to miss. What in the world is with the city and its floral decoration? I inquired. All something you'll learn in the future, but one thing at a time, Tyron. One thing at a time. One thing at a time. Yeah, sure, I thought to myself. I let out a sigh as I tried to calm my nerves and was wondering exactly how far away this newspaper office was. So, how far do we have to go? Feels like we've been walking for a bit. I asked. In reality, I really just lost track of time, looking at everything. About another minute and we'll be there. The office is closer to the edge of town, but that works out route-wise, he said back to me. At least Arkin's estimation was right, since as soon as we rounded the corner of a pastry shop, I saw a single-story newspaper building with what was roughly a 5-story indoor vertical farm building next to it on the opposite side of the street. I thought back to my talk with Gyron in the shuttle and figured what luck I would have if he'd worked in the building just opposite of me. It was then it dawned on me that I actually didn't really realize where I was going to be living. Hey, Arkin, should we go over where I'll be staying first? Seems like something that would be a bit better to take care of than anything else. I said, maybe was a bit too annoyed when I said it. Sounded like an asshole then, too. Arkin looked at me with a raised brow, to which I only managed to give an apologetic look, as I really had no idea why I sounded like such a brat there. You see the apartment building we just passed by? You'll be staying there, he said after examining my sorry face. Oh, that close to work. Was that intentional or just luck? I asked with genuine curiosity, as luck has maybe been the one thing that I've had throughout my entire life. Very much intentional and with good reason. Again, all will be gone over in the office, so if you could just hold your questions. Arkin was actually starting to sound a bit annoyed himself. I don't know how you could blame a guy like me in this situation for asking so many questions, but I also can't hold it against him either. We walked across the street to the office, and he walked in front of me so he could be the first to the door. He fished for his keys in his pocket and pulled them out as they clinked together. I took the time to look around at the streets once more, and something else clicked in my head. There wasn't a single car or motorcycle in sight. No above or below ground parking structures either. The streets were completely empty of automobiles, yet it looked like they were paid for them. I recall seeing plenty of bikes and bike racks, and of course I had my questions, but remembering his recent words, decided not to run my mouth. Until I could have gotten my answer, I chalked it up to the city not having the source of oil, save for the other cities due to the limited transportation here from them. They have bikes or some other form of self-propelled locomotion, so, I guess they have some way of getting around. It would have been a question for later, as Arkin fit the keys into the lock and turned them slowly. swinging the door open as he whistled and stepped inside for me to come in after him. He walked past me and motioned for me to follow him. He took me through the small building, which had only a few rooms. There was a printing room for the newspapers themselves, 2 other smaller rooms for storing the stacks of them, no break room or anything like that for relaxation. You should consider a single bathroom a source of relaxation. At the end of the building were 2 private offices, one empty and the other at least had somewhat nicely furnished and decorated, stuff around. I was scared for a moment that he'd lead me into the anteroom and say that this was his office, like some dark, creepy story figure. But I still think whatever god is out there for an unknown reason that he led me into the actual one with furnishing. It had no door, so we just slipped right in. He walked behind us and, he got behind his desk and took a seat. I looked around only to find there wasn't a chair for me to sit in. Figures. I frowned slightly, realizing I had to stand for a bit, but I did my best to hide my disappointment. Arkin cleared his throat as he dug through the desk drawer and pulled out some blank forms and placed them onto my side of the desk. I assume I have to sign all of this, I asked, leaning down to look at the papers and flipping through them. I was going to be there a while, and it seemed like there was going to be an extremely unnecessary amount of paperwork. And there's this much for this position? Dang. I can see why people wouldn't hire this often if this is what you have to do. We don't like to hire for other reasons, but you'll figure that out soon enough, Tyrion. It sounded like he was about to give me a drilling. I took my eyes off the paper and looked up at him. I had a feeling I was about to hear some unpleasant news. There are rules that you need to know. Rules that will make your time here much more bearable and, efficient. At this point, I was just tired of getting told things in an indirect manner, and so, needless to say, I think my annoyance grew to absolute full-blown irritation. What, for the job, or you got some personal issues like me not using the microwave? Rule 1. You are to never be outside of any official registered household between the times of 10 p.m. and 8 a.m. I thought these were rules for the work, not for my personal life. So, what does this have to do with work? I asked in hopes of clearing up my confusion, but Arkin didn't seem to have any patience for the question and carried on. Rule 2. You are to always accompany every window of your household with a planter. You must always have a red flower, white flower, and red flower planted in each and every planter. You are responsible for keeping them watered and healthy. Which left me to wonder, where do I get backup flowers, and what do I do if one starts to wilt? So what, I assume there's a nursery in town then? What do I do if a flower begins to wilt? Do I need to take care of the door frame too then? I asked in quick succession, hoping that he would stop to answer them before going into the next rule. Yes, go and buy one from the nursery and replant it, and no. Rule 3. You are to never go into the woods at any point in time. You are to stay within the city limits and infrastructure. I gave only a simple nod as I didn't have any questions for that one, or at least none that I could guess that he would answer. I wanted to ask him what was wrong with the woods, but I knew he would simply just keep moving on, so it didn't take me long to figure out these weren't actual town laws or something, but they were followed by everyone in town. For, some occult reason. Those freaking flowers gave that away as well, but it didn't explain what would happen to someone if they didn't follow the rules. I just kept the image of that damn creature in the back of my head every time I kept repeating the rules in myself. There was more than enough reason for me to follow it. I know what I saw was as real as much as I didn't want to admit it. Rule 4. You are to always finish your assigned duties at work for the day before you head home. Of course, this needs to be done within the confinements of Rule 1. Arkin said, I remember the 9 o'clock start time for my shift. I had to cover the whole city, or at least everyone signed up for the thing, which seemed reasonable for that amount of time. Rule 5. Let us hypothetically say you see something that scares you and doesn't appear human. Hypothetically, you are only allowed to speak about it in hypotheticals. Whether it be a description, appearance, its mannerisms, or what it is doing. I had given him a simple nod as he finished the sentence. I waited for the next rule, but it never came. We ended up looking at each other for a few moments of awkwardness. So, is this all I need to know, or Like, is there more? At all? Because I think I've gotten the idea you can't elaborate anymore on them, which seems like a hidden rule in itself. I asked, willing to break the awkwardness of the situation. He looked at me and gave me a subtle smirk before his lips began to move once more. That's all you need to know for your job. Just follow those rules and you won't be an issue here. I'm sure you'll fit in just fine. Now you're going to take this paperwork home and have it filled out by the time your work starts tomorrow morning. I looked over the stack of paperwork and sighed before I looked back to him. I assume there isn't any food or supplies in my apartment, is there? No, which is why I'm letting you go early today to take care of all of that. It's currently 2, so keep that in mind. Now do take care of things that you need to do. I would make sure you stop by the town hall to get your ID card. You will really won't want to lose that once you have it, as it's how you'll get things you'll need. Then make sure you talk with the apartment owner to take care of any arrangements or issues with the place. That's all. I didn't get the chance to ask any questions as he waved me out of the office before I could ask him, so I left the building with no idea of where the town hall was. I spent literally an hour just searching for that. I never asked anyone I passed on the street, as they all seemed pretty busy with work of some kind, and I got the feeling they were in no mood to talk. Everyone had always had a serious or focused face on when I saw them. Getting the ID card didn't take too long, thank God. I only had to get my picture taken and the account set up, and I was actually in and out in roughly 20 minutes. Same thing would have taken me 2 or 3 hours back in 9. I spent the rest of the day taking care of tedious errands, talking to the apartment owner and staff too, I guess. Food, household equipment, anything that you would need for daily life, essentially. I even bought myself a bike with the acquired funds the city gave me since it was in the budget. It was around 6 p.m. when I finally had everything done and taken care of. I still had the papers to take care of too, so I spent the rest of my time filling that out, which took me till around 8. Oh boy, that was not fun. Needless to say, afterwards I was bored. I looked around my apartment and let me tell you, if you get bored easily, 12 isn't for you. They don't sell TVs here, as I doubt they have any channels or hell any service. You could get a computer or console, but I guess that wasn't in my budget at the time, and what would I even play? I don't think any online games are going to be any enjoyable, and single-player games can get boring pretty fast depending on what you play. With nothing else to do, I opened the door to my apartment and sat down on the steps that overlooked a dark street, dotted with bright lights from the street lamps. I think fate, or whatever you want to call it, took pity on me as Gyron, of all people, rounded the stairs up to my floor, which was the 4th, for reference. We locked eyes for a moment, though neither of us spoke. I recognized a bit of concern and confusion in his expression, and I'm sure he was trying to look for the same in mine. He didn't have anything in his hands, so I figured he wasn't in a rush. I patted the stair next to me as he sat down. Figured it wouldn't hurt if either of us had a little chat. He took me up on the silent offer and sat down. I looked at him from the corner of my eye, and he stared out to the street below. You're in 402, huh? I asked him, even though I already knew the answer he was going to give. I was just trying to distract him for a bit, but he only nodded, the expression on his face unchanging. I let out a sigh and knew what was coming next. Alright, well, I guess I'll start it off since I can tell it's on your mind. Yes, this place is off. Very off. Yes, it concerns me, if not outright scaring me. He took his eyes off the street and looked at me as if he was expecting me to go on some sort of rant. I only looked back at him with a raised eyebrow. What? I said after pausing for a bit, as I didn't plan on going any lengthy spill. How are you not more freaked out about this? Gyron seemed genuinely terrified, but at the same time frustrated that I didn't seem to outwardly share the same feelings. The truth is, I was frightened of it all, but there was something that excited me about it as well. Look, you want to talk about this in my place? I said, patting his shoulder before standing up. I can see if I can find something for us to do. Gyron stood up and walked into my apartment before I even got the chance to go in. I just followed him in and closed the door behind us. Then just watched him pace around my living room like a madman, mumbling to himself. Gyron, calm down first of all. Take a seat, because I'm not going to have a conversation with the madman. I tried to get him to calm down with that, and eventually he looked at me before taking a seat in one of the wooden chairs at my dining table. He sighed and rubbed his temples. Alright, fine. Sorry, I'm good now, he said before crossing his arms across his chest and leaning back in my chair. Okay, good. And don't you break my chair or else it's coming from your budget. But anyways, You know the rules, right? He gave me a half-hearted chuckle before nodding. Rule 1 through 5. Not too hard to forget. He replied and waited for me to continue speaking. I simply nodded and walked over to the window, unfolding the blinds, staring out into the street, looking for something I knew would be there soon enough. I looked over my shoulder back at him, and a thought ran through my head. You'd call me suicidal for thinking it, but I'd be damned if I wasn't going to push the boundaries a little bit. I felt myself smile as I looked at him. You don't mind staying the night here, right? I think we can both wake up tomorrow morning feeling a bit more knowledgeable than we do now. He looked at me with a confused expression that demanded more information. Just trust me on this. I can't tell you why, but I'm sure we'll get answers if you take me up on the offer. This will be easier to come to terms with if we do it together rather than on our own. I looked back out the window once more to the street before completely turning around to him. I swore I could see the cogs turning in his head, but after a few seconds he gave me a hesitant nod. Good. You won't regret this. Well, hopefully. But hey, Rule 1 doesn't say you have to be in your house, just an official one, and, well, this one became an official housing this evening, so we got nothing to worry about. But for now, let's just find something to do. I walked around my apartment looking for any kind of board game that the city would have been nice enough to give me. I don't know what I expected, but there was actually a game of chess in my closet, which definitely wasn't there. So, needless to say, we wasted time playing chess and other stupid custom games with the set. I checked the wall clock to see that I was around 10 p.m. after a bit, and playing for a while. Well, let's go see some hypotheticals, I said with a smile and stood up walking back over to the window. The street lights were off, making it difficult to see anything. I scanned the streets for anything moving, but saw nothing. I looked back over to Gyron, who was silently watching me from the chair. Come on, man. I need you for this, too. Just come look out the window, alright? He sat there for a few seconds, clearly weighing his options, but relented and made his way over. Standing next to me, he looked out the window. He froze as soon as he did, which took my attention off of him, and I looked back to the street. I, too, felt that freezing chill run down my spine. Standing in the middle of the street was that yellowish pale abomination once again. Its head was turned up to my window as if it was watching me, which I'll admit freaked me out, and since I couldn't see its eyes due to its sunken nature and the darkness outside, but I could tell it was staring at me with its silhouette. One of its arms were raised in position as it looked like it was in the process of moving, but the other was still on the ground supporting its body weight. My horror quickly turned to fascination. I blinked to see if it would move, but it hadn't. It remained perfectly still like a statue. I turned my head to look at Gyron to find that he looked like he had seen death. He seemed to be on the verge of tears, but for some reason I didn't even bother to acknowledge it. No. I looked back to the street to find that the creature was gone. Don't get me wrong, on the inside I was terrified, but I couldn't help but feel emotions of curiosity overwhelming it. I wanted to know where it went, but before that I figured something out with Gyron. I looked at him once more before speaking. Hypothetically, let's say you see something. Perhaps it would help if you did not keep looking at it. He looked at me as quickly, but must have been confused by the lack of fear in my face or in my voice. He was visibly sweating and shaking. I'd never seen a man so scared in my life, and something tells me he wanted to scream as loud as he could, and he most likely would have if I hadn't started stalking again. Alright, now look back outside. Hypothetically, whatever you're seeing is gone. Right? His head swiveled back to the window as he looked back to the spot on the street where he had been watching. It took him less than a second to frantically scan the street before staggering away from the window, hyperventilating. I walked towards him and just patted his shoulder, doing my best to soothe his fears with comforting words. It took me about 10 minutes to calm him down to a rational level. I gave him a rather blank expression before smirking. Now that you've calmed down, Gyron, let's talk hypotheticals. Well, folks, that is going to be the end of our second chapter of the 12th study. Once again, I have written the story, so if there are any discrepancies or, critiques you have, please let me know. I'd love to be able to improve my story writing as I go on. But yeah, that's going to be where this one ends, folks. So if you liked what you heard and you want to hear more in the future, you know what to do. This has been Jumping Quills, and I'll see you folks in the next one.